Hello students. So today we are going to deal with the subject that is management concepts and organizational behavior. I, Dr. Priyaraj Butolia, Assistant Professor, Bora Institute of Management Sciences. Today we are going to deal with an interesting theory of motivation, that is equity theory of motivation. Don't wait for the opportunity, just create it. If you feel motivated, an individual can do his or her best. You shouldn't wait for the opportunity to come, but you should create an opportunity in your life. If you are good at motivation in terms of self-motivation, an individual will be very successful in his or her life. So, today the theory is about equity theory of motivation. It is actually the social exchange process theory, which says that an individual is motivated when he or she behaves in a particular set of manner, and that is about the equity theory. It says that how values influence motivation. The motivational theory of equity was given by J. Tassie Adams in 1960s, which is a process model of motivation. The equity theory of motivation deals with the way people compare the values of themselves to others. In a similar situation based on their inputs and outputs. This is actually whatever you can see in your society, and this theory actually prevails in the real world. Whenever you find yourself successful, you always compare your success with others' success. Whenever you find yourself anything better, you always start comparing those things with others. This theory gives emphasis on these factors, that the individual actually compares the value to themselves to others in the similar work. Same काम में आप कभी भी हमेशा आपने देखा होगा ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में सिमिलर वर्क सिचुएशन में अपने आउटपुट और अपने इनपुट को लेके हमेशा एक इंडिविजुअल दूसरे इंडिविजुअल से कंपैरिजन कर रहा होगा. Now we are dealing with the social world in terms of Facebook, Twitter, Insta. You can see every one person compares his or her life with other. Even in family you can see such kind of comparison. Parents compare a child's result with somebody else's child. It can be his or her neighbor or relative. So this is the basic factor, or this is the basis of equity theory of motivation. The theory assumes that people's motivation in an organization is based on the desire to be treated equally and fairly. Everybody wants to be treated fairly and equally. If you find any sort of inequity in an organization, you are demotivated. So this theory believes the concept of equity or being treated equally in society, in organization, or anywhere wherever you want to be or wherever you work. Now here, this theory was given by Adams, and he is basically a behavioral psychologist. He has shown the relationship between your outcome with related to your input, others' outcome in terms of others' input. This basically shows the comparison that आपने कितना input दिया and you receive the output. Similarly, in similar situation, when other person has given an input, you have compared his output. So this is the basic concept of this theory. You always compare your input and output with others' input and output. This theory clearly depicts what I want to say. It shows the relationship between equity and equality. In the society, you have a very clear picture about these aspects. In our life, actually we compare with our co-workers, we compare with our colleagues, we compare with our neighbors, relatives, and somewhere our present job with the past job. So human have a basic tendency of comparison. In organization, sometimes you can easily see that the people compare on the basis of their gender, like the men have the comparison with men or female have the comparison with females. Are they equally being treated? They have the fair salary, promotions or responsibilities? In the world of women empowerment, now you can easily see some women are even comparing with male co-workers for their achievement. So comparison is there in equity in terms of equity theory of motivation. Now, the concept of equity theory of motivation. The core of the equity theory is the principle of balance or equity. It is very important to create a balance or equity. If it is not there, the person is somewhere demotivated. So in terms of motivation, there should be a equal treatment. Equity theory is concerned with defining and measuring the relational satisfaction and of employees. Some other way it defines and it measures what kind of satisfaction a person receives while working in an organization. It also suggests that employees tries to maintain a balance between what they give to the organization against what they receive. It is actually the relationship between the input and output. If the employees find that they give more output and the input and the output is less as compared to the input, he feels demoralized. Whereas, if he finds that his input is equivalent to the output what is being received from the organization, he is motivated. So, the relationship between the input and output should be clearly defined, and that gives a balance or a terms of equity in the motivation factor. So, the employee should always feel that whatever input he or she gives, the output is in the similar manner. The assumption of this theory is based on 4 parameters. First, the theory demonstrates that the individuals are concerned both with their rewards and also with what others get in their comparison. हमें क्या मिला वो तो इम्पॉर्टेंट है ही है, बट हमारे कंपैरिजन में दूसरों को क्या मिला, दैट इज द एक्चुअल कंसर्न ऑफ एन इंडिविजुअल. एम्प्लॉयज एक्सपेक्ट a fair and equitable return of their contribution to their jobs. Obviously in terms of input and output, वो हमेशा ये चाहते हैं कि fair और equitable return in terms of output उन्हें organization से मिले. Third, employees decide what their equitable return should be after comparing their inputs and outputs with those of their colleagues. Employee खुद ही अपने returns को खुद ही मैनेज कर लेते हैं, खुद ही अज्यूम कर लेते हैं, क्योंकि हमेशा वो अपने इनपुट और अपने आउटपुट अपने कलीग्स से कंपेयर कर रहे होते हैं. सो दे ओनली डिसाइड द रिटर्न व्हाट दे शुड रिसीव इन टर्म्स ऑफ देयर इनपुट. एंड लास्टली, employees who perceive themselves as being in an equitable scenario will attempt to reduce the inequity either by distorting inputs or by outcomes psychologically. अगर किसी भी एम्प्लॉय को लगता है कि वो कहीं ना कहीं इनइक्विटेबल ट्रीटेड है, सो ऑन द अदर हैंड साइकोलॉजिकली वो अपने इनपुट्स को या अपने आउटपुट्स को ऑटोमेटिकली डिस्टॉर्ट करना शुरू कर देता है. अगर उसे लग रहा है कि उसका परफॉर्मेंस बहुत अच्छा है, उसका इनपुट बहुत अच्छा है, बट आउटकम उसके अकॉर्डिंगली कम है या सही नहीं है, तो कहीं ना कहीं वो अपना इनपुट कम कर देगा. या फिर अगर उसे लगता है कि उसका इनपुट बहुत अच्छा है और कंपैरेटिवली उसका आउटपुट भी अच्छा है, तो ही विल फील मोटिवेटेड. तो कहीं ना कहीं अगर वो इनइक्विटेबल फील करेगा तो अपने इनपुट में या आउटपुट में वो ऑटोमेटिकली अपने हिसाब से चीज़ें मैनेज करना शुरू कर देता है. सो दिस थियोरी इज बेस्ड ऑन द 4 assumptions. Now 2 important components of this theory which we have discussed: inputs and outputs. Input is what the individual gives to the organization in terms of efforts. वो rich and diverse elements हैं जो employee जनरली काम करते समय कंट्रीब्यूट करते हैं ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए. दे कैन बी education, their experience, their efforts, their loyalty, their commitment. So these things are considered as the inputs by an individual. On the other hand, the outputs what he receives in terms of rewards from an organization can include direct pay, bonus, fringe benefits, job security, social rewards and some or the other ways psychological rewards too. जब भी इंसान एक इनपुट देगा, he or she expects an output. The output can be in terms of his perception and along with his perception in this theory he compares those things always in terms of others' input and output. The comparison factor is always there in the real world which is there discussed in this theory. Now here let us discuss what are the 4 referent groups. First is the self inside, second is the self outside, third is other inside and fourth is other outside. Now what does self inside means here? Here it includes that the experience an employee had when they were in different positions in the current organization. जब एक ही ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में इंडिविजुअल डिफरेंट पोजीशंस पे काम करता है तो वो कहीं ना कहीं कंपैरिजन करता है. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अगर एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में अगर वो मार्केटिंग डिपार्टमेंट में था, उसके बाद में अगर वो फाइनेंस डिपार्टमेंट में चला गया तो वो उसी काम को कंपेयर करेगा कि मार्केटिंग में बहुत टारगेट्स थे, इंसेंटिव्स थे, फाइनेंस डिपार्टमेंट में टारगेट्स नहीं है, इंसेंटिव नहीं है, काम अच्छा है, काम बुरा है. सो सम अदर वे एक ही ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में डिफरेंट पोजीशंस को इंडिविजुअल कंपेयर कर रहा होता है. सेकेंड इज सेल्फ आउटसाइड. इट इनकम्पासेस द एम्प्लॉयज एक्सपीरियंस इन अदर पोजीशंस आउटसाइड ऑफ अ कंपनी. यहाँ पर अपने एम्प्लॉय अपने एक्सपीरियंस को कंपनी के बाहर के लोगों के साथ में कंपेयर कर रहा होता है. एम्प्लॉयज परफॉर्मेंस इन अदर पोजीशंस outside the company. Third is other insight. It involves a comparison of other employees' input and outputs in the same company. Other inside में individual अपने ही colleagues से अपने ही same company में काम करने वाले colleague के input और output से comparison कर रहा है. And lastly, other outside consists of a comparison to employees in a similar position outside the current company. अब यहाँ पर आप किसी और से कंपैरिजन कर रहे हैं जो आपके करंट कंपनी में था बट उसकी सिमिलर पोजीशन है आउटसाइड. ठीक है. सो यहाँ पर 4 रेफरेंट ग्रुप से कंपैरिजन हो रहा है एंड दिस इज द बेसिस ऑफ द इक्विटी थ्योरी. And always an individual do the same things in the family, society or in the work environment. There is nothing new. Now you can see that the theory is based on some organizational justice, an overall perception that what is fair in the organization. First is the distributive justice, perceived fairness of the amount and allocation of rewards among individuals. यहाँ पर individual says that I got the pay raise I deserve. मतलब जो भी वो चाहता था वो वहाँ पर उसने डिज़र्व मतलब उसने पे रेज अगर उसे मिली है तो ऑब्वियसली ही और शी सेज दैट वो उसे डिज़र्व करता था. मतलब यहाँ पर परसीव्ड फेयरनेस ऑफ द अमाउंट एंड एलोकेशन ऑफ रिवॉर्ड अमॉन्ग इंडिविजुअल. यहाँ पर इंडिविजुअल खुश है कि अगर उसे वहाँ पर रेज मिला है पे में तो एक्चुअली वो वहाँ पर डिज़र्व करता था. दैट इज़ द डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिव जस्टिस ऑल अबाउट. Second is about the procedural justice. Here, perceived fairness of the process used to determine the distribution of rewards. जैसे for example, I was given a raise with the explanation of why I was given. यहाँ पर अगर उसे raise मिला है तो उसे reason भी दिया है कि why this has actually happened. So here the process is been very clear in the distribution of reward. तीसरा is interaction justice. यहाँ पर the perceived degree to which an individual is treated with dignity, concern and respect. यहाँ पर भी उसे रेज मिला है, but supervisor said that it was very nice and it was in a complimentary manner. So first example में आपने देखा कि distributive justice में वो actually deserve करता था, उसे pay raise मिला. सेकेंड प्रोसीजरल जस्टिस में उसे पे रेज मिला और उसे डिफाइन किया कि उसे क्यों मिला. एंड तीसरे इंटरैक्शनल पैटर्न में उसे जो पे रेज मिला है उसे जब कॉम्प्लीमेंट किया गया, उसे बहुत अच्छा बोला गया, तो एक्चुअली इट वाज द इंटरैक्शन पैटर्न बिटवीन अ मैनेजर एंड एन एम्प्लॉय. सो यहाँ पर द थियरी इज बेस्ड ऑन द ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल जस्टिस पैटर्न. नाउ इक्विटी theory is based on three equations. First, there is a equity if the outcome of individual A and the output and the input of individual A is equal to the input and output of individual B. If it is same, then the individual feel equated. He actually feels that he or she is treated equal. यहाँ पर दोनों के इनपुट और आउटपुट सिमिलर हैं, इसलिए यहाँ पर दोनों ही बैलेंस फील करेंगे. द सेकेंड इक्वेशन इज अबाउट अंडर पेमेंट और इनइक्विटी. यहाँ पर एक्चुअली आपका जो आउटकम और इनका इनपुट होगा, इनपुट और आउटपुट होगा, वो दूसरे के इनपुट और आउटपुट से समवेयर कहीं ना कहीं कम है, इसलिए आप अंडर पेमेंट फील करेंगे. मतलब आपके इनपुट्स और आपके आउटपुट्स दूसरे इनपुट और दूसरे के आउटपुट के कंपैरिजन में यहाँ पर लो है, इसलिए यू फील दैट यू आर अंडर पेमेंट. नाउ व्हेन योर इनपुट एंड योर आउटपुट इज मोर एज कंपेयर टू अदर्स इनपुट एंड आउटपुट, हियर देयर इज अ फीलिंग ऑफ ओवर पेमेंट इनइक्विटी. तो यहाँ पर जब दोनों के एफर्ट सिमिलर है तो इक्विटी है. अगर आपका ज़्यादा है उसका कम है या उसका ज़्यादा है आपका कम है, तो you will have the feeling of underpayment or overpayment. So this is actually the scenario of the equity theory of motivation. Now, what is actually the implications of this theory in the workplace? You can see that you should avoid the system of underpayment. If the system of underpayment is avoided in the organization, the employees feel motivated. So you should always see that the person is not underpayment, not done underpayment, or in the terms of under rewarded. On the other hand, the employee should also not be overpaid. If the employee is over rewarded or overpaid, he will have a self confidence that मैं कुछ भी करूँगा तो भी मुझे रिवॉर्ड मिलना ही मिलना है. So in both the terms, in terms of over rewardedness or under rewardedness, in terms of overpayment or underpayment, the employee is not treated as equal. The third is be sensitive to inequity perceptions. You should be very sensitive if the person is feeling inequity in terms of behavior or in terms of working pattern of organization. Monitor regularly for creeping inequity. You should always have a continuously monitoring or supervision over the inequity feeling if it is creeping in an individual. When sacrifices are needed, distribute equally from top to bottom. If you need greater output or if you need greater efforts for achieving a particular set of objective or completing a particular target, always distribute the work equally. Don't overburden a particular employee so that he will feel that I has been allotted with more responsibility as compared to another, and in terms of reward, when the things comes into picture, I do not receive that reward. So whenever you actually get the work done with somebody, you should equally distribute the work between the top to the bottom, and if the time of sacrifice come, everybody should work in a similar manner. So that creates a pattern of justice, a pattern of equity or balance in an organization. And finally, know what your team values. This is actually what very important. because it actually gives you the perception what is important to an individual. If you know the individual values in terms of monetary benefits, non-monetary benefits, the factor of motivation is very easy. So, you should know what your individual or your employee gives values to the factors. Consequences of inequity. जब भी inequity या imbalance organization में होगा in terms of input outputs comparing with input and outputs of others, कौन कौन सी चीज़ें हैं जो बहुत ज़्यादा नज़र आती हैं, कौन कौन से consequences हैं जो organization को face करना होता है, that is change in input. अगर individual को लग रहा है कि he is not getting the particular set of reward according to his input, he will change his input. He will somewhere lower his performance. He will not perform in a particular dedicated manner as he or she was doing it previously. So, here input can be changed. Change their output. Some or the other pattern, if he feels the behavior of inequity by his manager, he can change his output even, he can change his outcome even. Distort perception about self. कभी कभी इनइक्विटी के कारण वो खुद के परसेप्शंस को भी डिस्टॉर्ट करना शुरू कर देता है एंड दैट इज़ अ मेजर कॉन्सिक्वेंस फॉर एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. समटाइम्स ही कैन इवन डिस्टॉर्ट द परसेप्शन ऑफ अदर्स. ही कैन ऑल्सो चूज अ डिफरेंट रेफरेंट. जनरली साइकोलॉजिस्ट ये बहुत अच्छे एक एग्जाम्पल में, अगर आपको किसी भी चीज़ से ओवरकम करने के लिए जब भी आप एक काउंसलिंग सेशन ज्वाइन करेंगे तो हमेशा ये बोला जाता है कि चूज़ अ डिफरेंट वेरिएंट. प्लीज़ डू नॉट कंपेयर विद द पीपल यू फाइंड लो. अगर आप बहुत ज़्यादा डीमोटिवेटेड फील कर रहे हैं तो आप अपना रेफरेंट ही चेंज कर दीजिए. इफ़ यू चेंज योर रेफरेंस एक्चुअली यू विल फील मोटिवेटेड. लाइक इन स्कूल टाइम इफ़ यू गेट 4th or 5th रैंक इन योर क्लास, your parents may say कि तुम्हारी 4th या 5th रैंक ही आई है. So sometimes the child may feel demotivated. But if you see that out of 60 students you have achieved 4th or 5th rank, actually you have gained something very good in your life. Here you have choose the different reference group for comparison, and this comparison can give a positive feeling in an individual. Leave the field. That is very obvious part. Sometimes actually employees quit the job if they feel it inequitable atmosphere in the organization. So these are some of the things you can see if there is inequity in an organization, like change in input, change in output, distort perception about self, distort perception of others, choose a different variant, different referent, or sometimes he or she may quit the job. The merits of this theory. What are the advantages or merits? The theory makes managers realize that equity tends to be one of the most important motives of the people in the organization. This theory makes the manager realize कि equal treat होना एक employee के लिए कितना important है in organization. This theory also says that is capable of contributing to both theory and practice of motivation. यहाँ पर जो बोला जा रहा है और जो actually practice की जाती है, that is the basic contribution of this theory. So these two are the advantages of the theory of equity. Now there are some demerits or criticism of this theory too. It says that the number of demographics and psychological variables affect people's perception of fairness and interactions with others. इस criticism में, इस theory में generally demographic factors और psychological factors को बिल्कुल भी consider नहीं किया है, because ये बहुत ज़्यादा affect करता है कि individual का perception about fairness कैसा होगा जब भी वो दूसरे से compare कर रहा होता है, in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of motivation, in terms of need. ये सारे फैक्टर्स जो हैं वो इंडिविजुअल को बहुत ज़्यादा इफ़ेक्ट करते हैं इन टर्म्स ऑफ फेयरनेस या इंटरेक्शन विद अदर्स. जनरली जैसे हमने इंट्रोडक्शन में भी बात की कि ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में मेल से कंपेयर कर रहे होते हैं और फीमेल से कंपेयर कर रहे होते हैं in terms of their input and output. So these things somewhere it is not being discussed. The people might perceive equity, inequity not only in terms of specific input and output of a relationship, but also in terms of overall system. यहाँ पर सिर्फ इनपुट और आउटपुट के टर्म्स में ही लोग अपने आप को इनइक्विटी नहीं फील करते हैं या बैलेंस नहीं फील करते हैं, बट ओवरऑल सिस्टम कैसा है वो भी बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है कि आपको वहाँ पर मोटिवेटेड फील हो रहा है या नहीं फील हो रहा है. एंड लास्टली, वन माइट फील दैट his or her comparison is equitable to other employees, but one might feel that the entire compensation system is unfair. कभी कभी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में एक इंडिविजुअल दूसरे इंडिविजुअल से कंपेयर तो कर रहा होता है, उसे लग रहा है कि सब कुछ सिमिलर है, बट ओवरऑल जो कंपनसेशन सिस्टम है ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का वो ही बहुत कम है. तो कंपैरिजन में भी जब आप कंपेयर कर रहे हैं दो लोगों से या एक अपने कलीग से, अपने साथ वाले कलीग से, तो कोवर्कर से, तो आप देख रहे हैं कि हम लोग इक्वली तो ट्रीटेड हैं, बट ओवरऑल जो कंपनसेशन सिस्टम है, ओवरऑल जो रिवॉर्ड सिस्टम है वही कहीं ना कहीं लैक कर रहा है. एंड दिस इज़ द डीमेरिट ऑफ द इक्विटी थ्योरी ऑफ मोटिवेशन. सो स्टूडेंट्स, वी हैव डिस्कस्ड अबाउट द इक्विटी थ्योरी, and which is very interesting and very practical theory in our real world too. In every family, in every organization, you can see comparison. You make comparison with others, your family make comparison with other family, a particular set of society makes comparison with others. In an organization, even a manager makes a comparison between two people, or an employee makes a comparison with other employee. He can be in the similar organization as well as in the different organization. So the whole picture is of comparing one person with the another person. In the real world, you will feel inequitable or you will feel injustice if you are not being provided on the platform of equity. So this is the basic factor you should avoid in your life. If you are happy with yourself, you will find motivated, but whenever you start comparing your things with other people, you actually feel demoralized. So this theory gives a very practical example of how you should live in your life and how you should be motivated in terms of your work pattern. So thank you students, I hope you have understood the theory. Stay safe, stay healthy and have a nice day.